This is Duke University.
Hi, I'm Paul Manos. I'm a professor in the Department of Biology, and I'm here to talk about Biodiversity of North Carolina. It's a MALS course that we've taught probably about 4 or 5 times before. I'm going to let John introduce himself and talk about the first part of the course.
I'm John Shaw. I'm also in the biology department. I've been involved in the MALS program for all of the 20 years that I've been here at Duke. I teach Darwinian Revolution in the MALS program, as well as this biodiversity course with Paul. The course is a little bit unusual in its setup in the MALS program, in that we meet a limited number of times, about 6 or 7 times for the regular evening meetings before we go off on a field trip for about 5 days up into the beautiful mountains of western North Carolina. We have class discussions. We have a few additional readings associated with the class. And then we're ready to go and actually see biodiversity in the flesh.
These are the tallest mountains east of the Mississippi, and in certain spots, this is the wettest area east of the Mississippi, and its rivals temperate rainforest levels of precipitation, something you might see in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle and places like that. So the combination of the topography, the up and down aspect of the land with the moisture and a couple of other factors really makes for a great setting for this explosion of diversity, plants and animals. And we know the botanical side, and that's why we rely on our friend who understands salamanders pretty well to come in and talk about them. And there's actually a session after his lecture where we've had people out in the streams collecting salamanders and putting them back, and it really is pretty exciting to sort of see the organisms. They are difficult to find sometimes, but we do it, and it's been a lot of fun over the years. These salamanders are often endemic or only found in the southern Appalachians, and that's part of why it's a center of biodiversity for salamanders and for some other groups, but notably salamanders.
You asked about whether this was really kind of also a bonding experience among the students, and I think it's fair to say that it's probably one of the most unique MALS courses in that way, because there's nothing quite like being off on a field trip for 4 or 5 days together to really get to know one another. And we sit around a fire one night outside, and people really make some good friends, both with us and among the students. But I think that's one of the most positive aspects of the course, is that experience together up in the mountains.
Yeah, and this idea of experiential learning, where you're hearing and talking about things outside of the classroom setting, is really something John and I got into as students of plants and through time at field stations or just doing field work. But thinking about what you're looking at, making observations, taking notes, drawing pictures, taking your own set of photos, all of that is really an incredibly unusual way to learn, and it's a really different way to learn. And we find that for some people it is so much of a kind of an invigorating experience about how to learn, and that they've never done it before. So we pick these trips because they bring us to interesting places such as waterfalls or the high coniferous forest and on the Blue Ridge Parkway, or to an area that's got rare and endangered plants in a wetland area. And all of these areas are distinct communities with their own plants and animals, and I think the contrast between these communities is what really makes the class come to life. I think some of the memories I have is really kind of a brisk morning with all of us sort of huddled around looking at a forest that still hadn't woken up yet, because in early April parts of the cooler sides of mountains are still dormant. So some plants are waking up, and then we go down to some lower elevations and the plants are actually at a different stage of development, and we were all warm and toasty at that point. So that was part of like a real spring experience, and I think that's kind of interesting to see the wake up in the landscape of plants, and you don't get that very often, and you see it more in the mountains.
I think one of the opportunities for having a field course like this is to really uniquely combine tremendous fun and an educational experience, because it's just plain fun to be outside and to see these things outside. There's a lot of oh wow moments of beauty out there.